All right, this is my community engagement presentation on the Boone Fork Trail Fall 2021 by Jessica Shank. All right, we got a few things to cover, so let's get through this fast. Civic literacy. This is creek life organisms I found and how they connect to what I've learned. I found algae. Algae is basically just photosynthetic underwater plants connected to rocks. During springtime, they are thriving. They're throughout the entire creek on the Boone Fork Trail. But to the right, you can see I found absolutely no algae anywhere. It was completely gone, and this is caused by a loss of oxygen and by a loss of nutrients caused by the death of many plants over time at wintertime and autumn time-ish. Mosses are mostly terrestrial plants that often live in moist environments and are entirely unicellular. They live on rocks and connect to them through rhizoids. These moss were basically the same in both sides. They were just a little bit more dull in color during fall compared to on the left, they were very abundant and green. This could also have something to do with the time of day. All right, so we have fungi, specifically lichens. So I found a tree trunk at the beginning of the trail that had a lichen on it. Basically, those are composite organisms. They're an organism formed by a community of organisms living together collectively, and they are working to live off of this tree trunk. And the fungi specifically is being used to decompose it. During fall, you can kind of tell that it's a little bit weird in color. It looks a little bit more dead, flattened. It doesn't look as groovy. The moss that it is working with is still there. The plant, whatever it may be. So I don't really know why it's like this. It might be due to dehydration, but it is a little bit different. We have arthropods too in the still parts of the creek. In still water, the Gerardae are a common group of insects, family of insects, and they are commonly known as water striders. They're the long-legged insects that you see walking on water due to water tension. And on the right side, you can't see a single one. I went back to the exact same location I did during spring to look for them. They were not there. Absolutely no water striders, and that is because cold water often drives them indoors. So yeah, absolutely none. My conclusion on civic literacy, my hike through Boone Fork allowed me to visualize and apply what I learned in class to assess the environment surrounding Boone and ultimately make me take a closer look at the environment of where I live and how it changes over time. I've always loved the nature aspect of this town, but I now feel a personal understanding of how its surrounding environment functions and how every aspect of it is important in keeping the ecosystem stable and healthy. My civic identity and commitment, basically just pictures. We have some from spring. It's a lot more green, a lot more abundant in color. You can clearly see in the entire creek, there's there's a lot more water in the creek, and two, it's a lot more green. Tons of algae in there. It's a lot more lively. Even though it was spring and it was still cold and there are some trees still without leaves, there are a lot more plants with leaves. During fall, obviously the opposite. There was absolutely no algae. There's still moss on rocks, but most of the trees had completely lost all of their leaves. They were scattered along the ground. You couldn't even really see the trail. And there were only a few plants that remained green and were alive. Images of me wearing the same shirt. It's me. I went. My experience at Boone Fork and how it's helped in identifying my goals within the community and in creating personal change. So basically, while on the hike, I made sure to not simply use it as solely an opportunity in creating this presentation. I took time to navigate how this experience could better me and understand the ecosystem surrounding myself and acknowledge the small things that take place here. The first time I went, I was asked multiple times by people like where things were, what I should do around the Blue Ridge Parkway, the trails, the lengths, etc. And I knew absolutely nothing about it. This time I was actually able to walk through it completely without having any questions about which direction I was supposed to be going in, even though, once again, the trail was not entirely visible. And I knew a lot of things to look for now rather than in spring. But yeah. So my ethical self-awareness, my beliefs, the environmental impact, although hikes such as Boone Fork allow people to understand how ecosystems work in easier access. Anyone that has walked in a popular hiking trail in a mountain area, such as this one, can see the degradation that can be produced by high numbers of walkers in a fragile environment. What do these include? Human changes in the environment, stairs, walking sticks, walls, bridges, anything like that that makes it easier to walk on a trail can completely affect an ecosystem, especially smaller ones. When large numbers of people hike a specific trail, animals will exhibit avoidance behavior, aka endemism, and the movement of rocks, plants, and branches for curious inspection by hikers can disrupt smaller, unthought of life within the ecosystems. Ultimately, as we change more of the natural landscape in Boone, we alter what makes it so very special, especially to me. I absolutely love nature, but the fact of the matter is, even though trails and hiking is meant to get people outdoors and going out and viewing nature and loving it and wanting to keep it safe and protected, it can also affect it in a negative way, and it needs to be shown as such. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great winter break. All right.